Hi, and welcome again to Leadership Takeaways. And here with me today is Jim Rees, who is an ultra cyclist, and also he is a business consultant with his partner, Mark Foster, the Olympian, in the company called The Long and the Short of It. Hi, Jim.
How are you, Rachel?
I'm good. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, you're actually the first English person that I've had on the Leadership Takeaways for a long time, because yesterday I was interviewing an industrial commercial psychologist, and then she's from Florida, and then before that I've had some people from San Francisco, Canada. So you're my first English person.
Let me explain the weird accent. So I'm English born but grew up in Australia, so I've got a little bit of a twang. So some people might think, is he really English? That's just for other people that are thinking that accent doesn't sound English. So there's a bit of an Australian twang in there.
Yeah. How long ago was it you were?
Oh, I've been back in the UK for 30 years now. So
wow. Okay. So actually, we can just. Sorry. Yeah. Go on.
No, there are still certain things. Certainly, when I've had a couple of elixirs of truth, the accent comes even broader.
So we can actually just pretend you're Australian today, and that actually I haven't come back into the arms of the UK. I'm still out there internationally recording. So
quite right. Yes, truth. Yeah. Let's do it then, Sheila.
Okay. Anyway, so for everybody here, usually how I meet people on these interviews is through Twitter, and we just follow. Well, usually a lot of people follow me for some crazy reason, and then I ask them to interview. But actually, I didn't meet you on Twitter. I met you face to face. I had heard of you and seen you do a couple of webinars for the Institute of Leadership and Management. And a couple of weeks ago, you were speaking at one of their big events, and it was wonderful. I was very impressed by your keynote speaking. And obviously, we got together because we had a lot of interest with business coaching, and you very kindly agreed to be on today. So thank you again, Jim, for giving your time today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
We kick off the Leadership Takeaway with strategy. And again, this is great because it just goes a number of different ways when I start this off as a subject matter with business coaches, CEOs, entrepreneurs that I speak to. And I just ask them, what was your strategy for kind of where you're at now, your career path and what you specialize in? Because obviously I heard you were talking at TEDx about your ultra cyclist skills going across America, but professionally you're a business coach. So tell us a bit more about the strategy behind how all the sports fits in with the business coaching, and which sprung out of which discipline.
Yeah, it's a good question. And was there a strategy? Actually, there was no strategy at all. And it is quite, I feel almost embarrassed that I didn't have a strategy. I fell into coaching. So I'm ex-pharmaceutical industry. So I used to work with AstraZeneca, one of the big global pharmaceutical companies, in sales, and then more latterly in my career in sales management. And then I was moving from Yorkshire in the late 90s, so in 1999, to the millennium, looking to come back down to London, and I couldn't get the level of job that I wanted in the industry. And a friend of mine was working with a coaching organization, and he said, why don't you come and work with this mob? And they were a big coaching company, a company called Speakers International. And I started in the coaching world as an account director, selling high-end corporate solutions, for leadership development programs, cultural change, all that sort of stuff. So I suppose I cut my teeth selling this stuff, and then realized not long after doing the job for probably about 18 months, 2 years, I thought, yeah, actually I could do this. I could be a coach. And then the rest is history, as they say.
And then the ultra cycling, you were the only British competitor consecutively to finish the American race solo, 2007, 2008, 2009. The highest position you got was 6th, which is amazing because you said about 50 people start and only about half finish. What's the race called? Is it called a race across?
Yeah, it is actually the Race Across America. So it started back in 1984 was the first race, and you know, it's just one of those things. I think people had done it previously. They'd cycled across America, but never really sort of set down a time, laid down a sort of a competitive time. So this race was born, and I think 4 or 5 people did the first race, and then it's kicked on from there. And it's, you know, I didn't really know much about it at all. I was competing in Ironman triathlons for many years before I then got into ultra cycling. And because of a running injury, I decided that I needed to look for something that didn't involve running for a period of time to keep fit, to keep focus. And a friend of mine said, why don't we do the thing, you know, this thing called the Race Across America? And the first time we did it was back in 2005 as part of a 4-man team. And then when I finished the race as part of a 4-man team, I realized that actually, I wonder what it might take mentally. You know, did I have what it took mentally to mentally compete in this race? Physically, I thought I would be able to do it, but actually mentally, could I do it? And could I leave a good impression during the race under that extreme pressure? So how would I show up as a human being under extreme pressure, under the pressure of cycling 22, 23 hours a day with very little sleep per day in that 12-day period?
And where were you at business-wise? Were you still selling coaching, or were you a business coach by that point?
Yeah, no, I was coaching. So in 2003, I started my own business and started in this field. Just bear with us for a second. Can we pause? Are we okay to pause? You can cut the pause.
I can't pause, unfortunately. So we're going to have to just talk while we're on camera. So,
but you can edit this later.
I can't edit, no.
I'm so sorry, Rachel.
It's fine. So I'll keep talking. Do you need to go out the room, or are you back?
No, I was just saying goodbye to somebody, but that's fine.
Okay, goodbye. So who have we just said goodbye to?
Goodbye to an entrepreneur who I'm working with, who is got a bunch of estate agencies here in St. Neots, and there's a whole load of other stuff that he's looking to do as well as an entrepreneur. So he's got his finger in various other pies, one of which is doing events to improve the image of estate agents across the UK. And
you're in St. Neots, so you're not that far away from me, because yeah, very good. What's the estate agency? Because I think I know the estate agent.
Matt Giggs.
Yes, I think I've heard of him. Anyway, so obviously everybody who's watching this doesn't even know an estate agent called Matt Giggs, who's improving the branding of estate agency in the world, but we know who he is. Yeah. So bye, Matt. Anyway. No, I wondered with your ultra cycling whether what kind of was the source of starting you off, and you were already doing your business coaching. So it's interesting that you were already starting to challenge mindset in your business life, that you then were looking at pushing the boundary with your physical. And I do find that this does tend to occur with sort of myself and people I work with. When you do start looking at the potential of business, you want to improve everything in every area of your life. So I just wondered if there was kind of a leak through into why you physically chose. And I don't think people actually understand how physically challenging the Race Across America is. Is there any way you can describe the actual physical challenges to people who don't actually get it, without, because I know you showed videos that I've watched of it.
Yeah, the race itself has to be completed within 12 days. So you're talking about 3,000 miles non-stop across America.
Yeah.
In live traffic. You get all the temperatures that are very extreme, from over 100 degrees right down to minus when you're climbing the Rockies, and the freezing temperatures during the nights. And sleep deprivation is one big thing. And then hallucinations due to the sleep deprivation also hit you as well as a cyclist. And then sheer fatigue. You're you're cycling non-stop for 22, 23 hours a day, you know, with very little sleep. So when my last event back in 2009, as you said, I was 6th overall in 10 days, 20 hours. And in that 10 days and 20 hours, I slept 13.5 hours total.
Yeah.
So people that had kids or people that have worked night shifts or done a double shift, you'll be familiar of how tired you feel when you haven't had enough sleep. So, you know, when you back that up day on day for 10, 11 days, you are literally a shell of the person that you were when you first started the race. So it is considered to be one of the toughest races on the planet. And with good reason. You know, it's 2 people have died during the race. They've been hit by vehicles because they've either lost control or fallen asleep on their bike while cycling. So, you know, I guess I wanted to push myself to test my mental toughness and my mental resilience, and also test whether I actually could I continue to be emotionally intelligent during that sort of a race. You know, could I still show up as a nice human being and not bark orders at my crew and be a complete, you know, idiot, as they would say in Ireland, you know, given those extreme pressures on me physically and also emotionally and mentally.
Yeah. And could you be a nice person?
Yeah, I think so. I think there were moments where, on the whole, yes, I'd say yes. I think there were, you know, I've had feedback from people that have watched the documentary of my first race across America, where I got a little bit carried away within the first 6 hours of the race, you know, so I was just, you know, there were things that weren't sorted and I got a little bit antsy about stuff. But actually, as the race progressed, I just sort of, you know, really realized that I need my crew there. And if it wasn't for the crew, I wouldn't be able to do the race.
Yeah, and there's probably a certain element of vulnerability that we show in those moments. I saw Davina McCall when she was cycling and swimming, and I can't remember what else she was doing. And she came out of the water and she was so freezing. Her whole body was kind of going into spasms, and I think she was sort of crying like a baby. And you just go into this whole vulnerableness where you need people around you, and you lose all that kind of social etiquette of, oh, I'm just tough and I just get on with it. And I don't know, I mean, I haven't been in your position, but I've seen people in extreme sports situations where they've pushed themselves, and you do just become, to me viewing, vulnerable, very, very vulnerable.
And you are raw. I mean, and then you're handing your life to your crew, in essence. You're trusting at that level, you know, so that's actually extreme levels of trust, to be able to hand yourself over and say, okay, my life is now in your hands. You can tell me when I need to sleep, when I don't, you know, etc. Yeah.
So with you then, with the strategy, it seems you very much have played your life by your heart, by your emotions, and that's where it's taken you.
Yeah, I guess I realized as a coach fairly early on, actually, I think it was back in 2003 when I decided to have my own business, start my own business. I recognized, you know, we all ask this question: what's our purpose? Why have we shown up on planet Earth? What's it all about? We all have that query, that inquiry. And for me, what I was getting back was I was here to help people with their self-esteem and their self-confidence. And you know, as a coach, if I get asked, you know, if people approach me and say, do you want to get involved in this business or that business? If it's not in line with my purpose, i.e. me helping people with their self-confidence and their self-esteem, then it's an easy no. So if it's to sell some multi-level marketing thing, and even though they may think I'd be very good at it, if it's not on my purpose, if it's not on purpose for me, then I just ignore it and say, thanks, but no thanks.
And that's just part of knowing who you are and what you want and where the line's drawn anyway. So that's just like you say, having self-esteem, but understanding your values and where your daily actions are matching your values of what fulfills you, basically.
Yeah. And actually, interestingly, it's interesting that I picked self-esteem as the reason I wanted to help others. And of course, I, as a young boy, as a young adult, as a father, as a parent, etc., growing up, I obviously had my own issues with my own self-esteem and my self-worth. So, you know, a lot of us end up falling into these roles that we play as coaches or leaders within our organization, doing things because actually we've had that journey ourselves, you know. So I've been on that personal journey as well.
Yeah. And talking about journeys along the way, it's worth mentioning, because obviously you mention it when you talk about the long and short of it. Your business partner, Mark Foster, who is a little bit more famous than you, only just a touch though, who's a multi-winning Olympian swimmer, and then you met him over 10 years ago when you were doing Ironman together, and obviously you had lots of commonalities, and then he saw you keynote speaking and wanted to learn and go more into that area. And so again, was that an emotional connection for you, or did you just think, you were thinking with your head, oh, this will be good for my business? And
no, we just became mates. So you know, the interesting thing is, Mark and I didn't know each other at all. Before I met Mark, I didn't really know that he was you know, our best British swimmer ever. You know, he had a 23-year career, which is, for a short course specialist, is quite remarkable. So he's been able to keep himself and maintain his fitness levels over a long period of time. So 5 Olympics that he went to, he should have gone to 6, but he ended up with an injury and wasn't able to go to his 6th Olympic. But he broke the world record 8 times in his career, you know, and that's quite remarkable, to break 8 world records in that, over that period of time. So you're talking about fractions of seconds that he's looking to shave off, whereas I was looking at taking hours or days off my performance. And of course, you know, our business is the long and the short of it. It's not because he's a giant and I'm a hobbit. It's more because of he was the short course specialist and I was the long course cyclist. You know, so and I'm not an Olympic cyclist. I'm just a sort of a weekend warrior, if you like. You know, I'm a parent of 6 kids, as you know, and you know, run our own business together. So, you know, I'm juggling this on the weekends. So I'm doing the training when I get the time, and on the weekends I'm doing that training for the Race Across America. So it's a lot to juggle, and it puts an enormous weight and pressure and stress on the family life, for example.
Yeah.
Yes.
And actually that moves us quite nicely into the second part of the leadership takeaways, which is strengths and weaknesses. So with where you have got to, and obviously you have achieved a lot, you know, just with the cycling, but also, you know, in business and the impact that you're making with leaders that you're working with. And that's the joy that we get, is to make an impact. What would you say are the strengths that have armed you to be able to do all of that?
I think I think we reflect on ourselves and sort of say, okay, so what's my journey been like? You know, so if I think about the things that I might bring to the table, it's emotional resilience, you know, my ability to bounce back quite quickly. And ultimately, what's that about? Well, underlying that emotional resilience is taking 100% responsibility for stuff that's showing up in my life. So if I've got dysfunctional relationships, then I've got to look in the mirror and say, how have I created that? How have I manifested that into my life? And own it, instead of saying it's because of the economy, it's because of so-and-so, it's because of you, Rachel, it's all your fault, you know, and blaming other people. When I'm doing that, when I'm blaming other people, I'm not taking 100% responsibility for my stuff. So so underpinning the emotional resilience is the personal responsibility, personal power, and making sure that, and of course and then on top of that, given that, you know, I'm very competitive, is I'm very, 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 very goal directed. You know, so, you know, you set me a goal, you set me a task, and if I say yes, I'll do it, it's done. It's done as soon as I've taken it off your hands and said I'll do it. It's done. You know, that's how goal directed I am.
Yeah. So you'd be a great business partner then.
So almost a bit like Terminator, relentless. you know, and sometimes actually, of course, that has dysfunctional things show up as well. So being goal directed means that actually it means other things get left aside. So when, you know, and you think about it, you think about Mark, for example, you know, and any other Olympic athlete that's been successful in their career, they're very focused. There's nothing wrong with being focused. It just means that actually other stuff have to go out of focus when you're being that focused. So of course, you know, some relationships within the family dynamic can get out of focus when you're so focused on your pursuit of your goals.
Yeah.
And it's easy to see that when I'm working with, and I'm sure you see it as well, Rachel, in your practice as a coach. It's easy to see that when you're working one-on-one with leaders around some of the patterns of behavior that aren't serving those individuals that you're working with. And it's very easy to see, you know, it's very easy to see those patterns, ones that are serving them really well and some that aren't actually serving them at all.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because at the moment I'm reading a book by Lolly Daskell, and she's a top executive coach in the States. And she's written a book called The Leadership Gap. What gets between you and your greatness. And it's very much along that lines of, you take a characteristic that is actually a strength, but it's got a weakness to it as well. Like you said, the goal orientation also means you're actually just going to be way just focused on one thing, and all the eggs drop out the basket. So it's and you're absolutely right. It's understanding those strengths, but understanding the balance of the weakness that would then cause. And she then goes on to say that when she works with leaders, it's about bringing that awareness back, that what got you to here won't get you to there, which is the title of a Marshall Goldsmith book. And a lot of leaders aren't prepared to look at that, because obviously they've kind of honed in on that strength so much that then they're not willing to look at their weaknesses, because they're like, well, actually, I've kind of made it. Why should I look at my weaknesses? Well, actually, it's going to have a massive impact on the people around you, and that's where we come in as business coaches. So it's interesting that you can see that as a business coach, that your strength is also your weakness, which is what I sometimes talk to other CEOs in these interviews about when I ask them their strengths and weaknesses. So you are crucially aware of that, which is,
yeah, painfully sometimes, you know, painfully, you know, at the cost of the people that are closest around me, you know, so around my children, around my wife and other family members. You know, they're the ones that actually take the big hit, because they're the ones that I think I can get away with it with more so. And actually, let's face it, that's unacceptable behavior for anyone. You know, for the people that are most near and dear to us, it's unacceptable to just expect them to pick up the pieces along the way. So we've got to be aware. So, you know, it all starts with awareness. All starts with awareness.
Yeah. And then being vulnerable, which that's something my strength is so fiercely independent. But then a lot of that is learning to actually explore that vulnerability, which actually vulnerability is the key strength with leadership that brings you closer together with your tribe. And I think, wow, the person that can be vulnerable is in a very strong position, because in society vulnerability is read as weakness.
No, I agree. No, I agree. And to be fair, I mean, a lot of people would see me as some sort of, I don't know how I'm seen particularly necessarily, but they haven't seen or heard the real story, because I haven't been able to be vulnerable to tell the real true story. You know, the sort of the why, what pushes you, what motivates you, why are you doing this? Why have you done it 3 times? You know, what's that about? So yeah, and it's taken me a while, you know, with support of other coaching colleagues, to actually get that out, you know, and make me feel comfortable about telling some of the truth around some of that stuff, and being vulnerable to accept that, yeah, it's on me. It's no one else's fault. This is on me. The quality of relationships that are surrounding me right now are all based on me. I'm the key denominator of all of them.
Yeah, exactly. You know, when people move countries because they think it's going to be less stressful that I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and it's like, well, the common denominator is you take yourself when you go to that other country, and you're not going to suddenly lose that stress. It will come back again. It might be gone for a couple of weeks, but this is the common denominator. So so what would you say then, Jim, really is the purpose behind all of this going on with you?
To again, I suppose, given my life journey so far, I would say that it's to help others, you know. And if you look at a lot of the spiritual teachings, you know, if you think about the Dalai Lama, you know, and I think about some of the quotes that he's put out and consistently puts out, is we're on purpose when we're helping others. And, you know, I'm in that privileged position, as you are, where we're you know, I'm really passionate about what I do, and I know you are as well, just a little bit. You know, that we're really passionate about what we do, and we're lucky that we've actually found something that we're passionate about, because most people on the planet aren't passionate about the jobs that they're doing, you know, and the work that they do. So, well, you know, yeah. I love seeing that transformation in people over a period of time, you know, the awareness that they get, and then the transformation given, you know, the change in the patterns of behavior that we help them with.
And it's interesting because I used to think, oh, you know, I want to help people find their passion, but it's just a case of releasing your potential, you know, who the real you. And I was reading on the International Coaching Federation on LinkedIn, they've got a big group discussion, and there was something about passion, and there was a couple of coaches saying, well, this one coach had been asked by their client, do I have to find passion in my job for it to be effective? And you know, a lot of coaches were saying no, and I agree, you don't have to find passion, because what's one person's passion is another person's purpose, or is another person's just the fact that they complete a working week, or just the fact that they get to go home early and pick their daughter up from school, or it's whatever is fulfills you as a person. And there's a lot of people who their natural expression of who they are is not passion, not being passionate. They might be very quiet and introvert. I think passion's always mixed up with fieriness and outward expression, but you can be inwardly bubbling away with a nice little bit of passion without this huge outward showing. It's just, for me, it's just connecting you to who you are and just really being yourself. Are you just yourself? Are you really being who you wish to be? You're not suppressed by anything, any limitations. So that, for me, and that might not be described as passion to some people. Again, we were talking before we started about a lot of societal definitions of certain things are very misconstructed and not really representing people very well. So yeah, passion is just the natural expression of who you are, and it doesn't mean you're jumping up and down all fiery and bubbling over. So
I suppose another word that would perhaps describe it is the essence of you. You know, so what are the ingredients of you that makes you you? So yeah, no, I agree, because, you know, if I think about passion, I think about the Italian stallion, sort of like, you know, there's a real passion that the Italians have, but it's what we're talking about basically is energy. You know, the essence of that individual. How do they show up energetically? And energetically, if you calibrate me doing something, you know, in the role that I play as a coach, if you like, compared to me doing something else that I'm not on purpose with, then there'll be a very different calibration in terms of my enthusiasm, my will to want to do those particular tasks, etc. So yeah, and we all do that moment by moment throughout the day.
Yeah,
you know, depending on the context of what we're doing.
And again, there was a bit, unfortunately, because of a misreading of the definition of energy, because again, when I started getting into coaching, previously when I'd heard this, oh yeah, just some great positive energy, man, and then that would freak me out, because it would sound like kind of hippie-ish talk of people, and again, I like to glam up and wear nice dresses. So the whole idea of sitting in a field or, you know, in a big festival, a big muddy festival with people with long dreadlocks who haven't washed for 3 days, and not that there's anything wrong with that. Yeah, I know you've got no hair, but but this whole idea of energy flow, man, and unfortunately it gets a bad reputation because it sounds flaky. It sounds, there's no substance to try to explain what that energy means. So that's, it got a backlash, and which is wrong, because there's so, as we've both discussed again, so much science, and it's so exciting with what's coming up with this ability to read energy and have an energy flow throughout an organization. There's people, the CEOs I've interviewed about energy flows in leadership, and you can literally sense the blockage when you walk in a room. And this is where you hear the old saying, you could cut the atmosphere with a knife. Well, that's energy, but as humans we kind of read the signals, but we don't know how to describe it because you can't see it. There's more science coming to this, and I know this is something that you study and you look into a lot, and I am so excited by it because I sense it myself, but I can't give words to it. But now I can start to give words to it. Now I've studied some of it, and Wayne Dyer is a great place to start, because he talks about energy resonance, and the whatever the measure of energy is, I can't remember what it is, but he says when a baby naturally humans should be resonating around 500-600 to feel good and to take care of themselves. When a baby cries and screams, it's around about 200 on the resonance scale, which dips the whole energy down way lower than it should be. And obviously that's when you start to feel you don't feel too good when you're hearing a baby screaming, and that's because it's infecting the energy flow. And that's when I say to people and clients, get yourself out. I mean, obviously make sure the baby's safe with their mom and whatever, but if you don't have to sit in that cafe having a meeting while the baby's screaming and you're like stressed out, you're trying to concentrate and having to shout over, and it's because of all the energy resonance that's going on. And as humans, we it starts to suppress us, and we can't be at our best. Yet a lot of people would just think, well, you just got to put up with it. Well, no, you don't. You have a choice. So move to another environment and take care of yourself. You know, make sure everybody else is not impacted by it. So I have a massive interest in this area.
You give a really nice example, actually. It's a nice visual example, because we've all experienced that. Experience, or as bystanders into a cafe and heard a child cry. But actually, interestingly, what you're speaking about is managing stress, you know, and in the corporate world, you know, we're bombarded with inputs, you know, all the time, you know, emails, phone calls, rude people, all sorts of stuff is going on around us. And, you know, it's a similar sort of, it's not as acute as the baby, but it's actually a very similar sort of response that we're causing in our body when we're facing that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and again, like we were saying, it's just becoming aware of that, and then being able to have discretion enough to say, okay, well, we need to maybe reorganize this meeting or move this meeting, or address the situation. If you feel like your boss or your colleague you're working with, oh, you know, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm fine. Or is it, okay, well, you're obviously not fine, but it's okay if you don't want to talk about it, but I'm not just going to breeze over the fact that there is definitely something, you know, kind of going on here, and it'd be great if we can talk about it, because then it will air some grievances, and then, you know, we can all collaborate better. But people don't deal with that. They can tell there's a couple of people who are either you know, not effective or not functioning very well that day, and you know, not enough is brought to the front, brought to everyone's awareness, and not whether we just don't care, or we've forgotten how to care and say stuff, and it's not protocol to ask someone why they're not dealing with something so well, or is there anything that you can do for them?
It's
time.
So you see it all the time, Rachel. It's time based. You know, leaders are not they don't believe they have time to check in with people at that level, even though it might take 15 seconds to just have that conversation. They think, well, actually they're paid well, they should be able to handle themselves, I'll skip over it. You know, and actually we're running so fast on this treadmill to try and stay ahead of the game, but we're not. A lot of it's all time-based. You'll see it time and time again as a coach yourself with the people that you're working with. It's all time. It's all next. It's, you know, and people are, no wonder people are getting burnt out, more stressed, off sick, long-term sick. You know, it's a big issue here in the UK. We're losing billions per year in unproductive people because they're off sick long-term, you know, because of stress.
Yeah, and it's just something I've learned that I advocate to people I work with, that just not to step over those issues, because although it might be a short-term win on time, it will be a long-term lose on time, because ultimately if things are not nipped in the bud when you have that thought, oh, should I say that, or I'm going to be, you know, 15 minutes late to that meeting, I need to just find out if that's going to impact anybody, and then just deal with the impact when I get there, rather than just be late or just talk over everybody or never ask anybody for anybody's opinions, or my way is right. And then if you never just deal with that, then everyone else will start to role model that behavior. So it's the long-term impact.
That's exactly that's how cultures are built, as we know, you know, and yeah, you're completely right.
Yeah, so that's our job. But so that's some of our learnings and lessons. And the third aspect of leadership takeaways is resources, and it looks at, Jim, and again, different people I interview, sometimes they've got maybe a people heavy industry, or it's based on services, or it's based on products. So with your business, obviously as business consultants, we're not so heavy on people who we need to work for us, or big companies and industrial chains or anything like that. But where would you say resources to kind of support you and allow your business to flourish?
Yeah, it's a good question. So where am I allowing that to happen? I think as we continue to become a bit more automated, you know, I mean, you know, it's interesting because we are heading down this avenue. We've been looking at, and I've been looking at for some years, what is the way to support some of the coaching programs that you might deliver face to face with a client, and how do you help sustain that in the future, you know, for your clients that you're working with. So that's something that is, you know, still in the sort of in the cook pot, if you like, in terms of how do we want that to look and feel, etc., to support the best sustainability for the client. Because one of the main reasons coaching programs, change programs don't work, and McKinsey, I think it was something like 92% of change programs fail, which is pretty shocking really when you think about it. And actually scary if you think about the billions that are spent in cultural change programs, leadership development programs, etc. So it's a bit scary when you think about those stats. But the main reason they fail is that there's nothing plugged in at the back end, which speaks to how do you sustain this. So a lot of organizations do their leadership development program with a batch of 10 to 12 of their senior leaders. They develop those leaders over a period of time, and then there's no real one-to-one follow-up or coaching or, you know, programs that they can plug into that actually sustain the learning over a period of time, to really embed that, you know, the models, embed the thinking, etc., and change the habits. And I know that's something that you've been looking at yourself, and you know, I'm very impressed with your stuff that you're sharing with your clients. So, you know, there's some role modeling that, you know, I can learn, even though I've been around the block a few more times, perhaps, in this world. There's stuff that it's great that you're happy to share and abundant with how you're doing stuff. Yeah, we can learn from one another, and that's exactly what, you know, I've been thinking more recently of, you know, is how can we role model some excellence that's happening elsewhere.
Yeah, but on like for you, resource wise as well, the way I also think about resources for me personally is supporting myself even daily and weekly. So what are some of the things that just that you can share on this interview that you do personally wise, business wise, that keep you, you know, keep you well, keep you fresh, you know, keep you plugged into everything that you need?
Okay, so the easy one for me is exercise. So that is something that I've been innately sort of attached to, I suppose, for many years. Having had an injury, a shoulder injury for the last 4 or 5 months, and an operation on my foot, I've been sort of fairly sedentary for a number of months. So I've been like a caged tiger for some months, and now I'm actually out doing a little bit more training now. So so exercise for me is really important. That's part of it. I also read a lot, similar to yourself. I you know, put myself on various programs, and you know, I have my own coach as well, you know, and other people like yourself and other colleagues that I can sort of tap into when I might need that sort of nourishment, that support. You know, if I'm in a space where, you know, I'm a human being, so you know, I'm not up all the time. There are occasions when I might find myself in some dark spaces, you know, in the corner, you know, not catatonic with drool coming down my side of my cheek, but actually sometimes close to it, you know. So there are those occasions, and if that's the case, then it's really healthy to be able to pick up the phone and have a conversation, or even go and meet a friend for a coffee. So there's a number of things, and then again on top of that, you know, meditation, stuff like that. But I think also helps as well. So, but I really enjoy having contact with people, you know. So the worst thing you can do is take the bike, take the running shoes, take the swimming goggles away from me and put me in a room with no people at all. That would drive me crazy.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like a concentration camp, but fortunately people have had to endure that, which, like you say, would just be the worst thing imaginable. But what would you say is the most, yeah, sorry.
Just speaking to that point, actually, and you may well have read his book, which is Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl's book did exactly that. He endured Auschwitz, and he realized as a psychotherapist that the only thing that he could have, they couldn't take away from him, was his attitude. You know, the way that he thought about things, the way he viewed the certain circumstances that he was dealing with. So some people didn't have that strength of mind, and they ended up perishing earlier than they probably should have.
Yeah.
And he realized that it was actually, ultimately, they can strip everything away from you. They can ration your food. They can give you very little clothing, the sleeping quarters, the overcrowding, you know, the beating and the whipping, and all the terrible treatment that he had enduring all of that. He realized that the only thing that they couldn't take away from him was his mindset.
Yeah, totally. I love some quotes from Viktor Frankl. What an amazing man. And just I think for me, it's the whole idea of choice, that you have a choice between stimulus and response.
Completely.
As humans, we have this little gap called choice, and how I choose to react to this. But yeah, also picking up on your thing of it's not all perfect, and even as business coaches, when we understand, we have awareness, we have a responsibility for actions, we do still get down. And I'm still a proponent of be with it and even talk about it and say, I'm not like I was saying to you before this interview, I have had an awful day, and I have slipped into my old habits of, you know, a few things didn't go my way, and I did feel sorry for, and I asked you, could we lengthen the time of when we start filming, and all these things. And I think the only thing I have is the choice to be aware that I'm going into that, and I can still go into it and be a little bit down or be with those feelings. Because I think the one thing as a business coach is you can't always be happy, and it's very healthy to feel negative. It's not a case of, oh, I'm a business coach so I can fix myself happy 100% of the time. no, I can see when I'm being negative, and just maybe be a little bit aware of the impact on other people, and not impact people so much, but just allow myself to still feel that.
Yeah.
There's a real big danger of people thinking somehow you can take that away, and we need that unhappiness or those moments of self-introversion or whatever it might be. And I'm sure Viktor Frankl would probably have agreed that, yeah, you can choose to be happy in this situation, but you can still be human as well. And we still feel sorry for ourselves, or feel a little bit sad, or you know, you have to feel those negative feelings to appreciate the positive feelings.
I agree. Yeah, completely. Yeah, you know, and being able to calibrate the difference, you know, so, you know, when we were talking about greatness earlier, you know, we all have the potential for greatness, but also we all have the potential for evil things, you know, each one of us that walks on this planet, you know, so, and some people exhibit some of those behaviors, some of the nasty, terrible behaviors that we see on TV, etc. But equally, that individual also has the opportunity to have greatness as well, you know, and do phenomenal things as well. And that is something that I do really truly believe, that we have got greatness inside us. And unfortunately, sometimes that gets dampened down over time. You know, it gets eroded.
Yeah, indeed. And that there's our little task again to bring that back. But, you know, just not judge, I guess, because we then go into this whole idea of somehow, or if you've got this awareness, you take this responsibility that somehow we're better, we're just more aware, and we're just more able to make those choices. But it's not like I'm a better human being than somebody else. I mean, obviously someone who does some evil things is not a good human being, but it's just being able to not judge and ask questions in a moment of what could send someone that way, that they're depressed, or they're just not having a great time in life, and actually not make an assumption, I guess, until you've spoken to that person as well. So yeah, there's
as you said earlier though, Rachel, we need those examples. We need to know that end of the scale for ourselves, but also there are people out there that are not particularly great examples of how you and I might want to live our life. But actually, we need to be able to see that end of the spectrum to appreciate the other end of the spectrum. You know, it puts perspective. You know, it's all about perspective. You know, ultimately, at the end of the day, when you're in a bad space and you're having a bad day, all you need is, you know, either something on TV or someone walking down the street, or not even being able to walk down the street, as a sort of a reminder. Actually, you know what? Compared to that person or that individual or that circumstance, actually things aren't going too badly at all, really. So it's about perspective.
Yeah. We have actually come naturally into the fourth part of the interview, which is all about insights. And what would you say, having talked a little bit about some of your, you know, how you resource yourself, if you had to give some, you know, just maybe a key thing to somebody listening to the interview, what would you say would be your kind of one of your most important practices that you do sort of on a regular basis? What's been the most important thing that you think has armed you, has allowed you to be so resilient through lots of things that you've done with the sports?
I guess ultimately it's about being mindful of what fingerprint do you want to leave, you know, so how do you want to show up in the world? And you know, if you can be conscious of that, and look, myself included, okay, I'm no guru. I'm not a guru. That, you know, I'm a normal human being, and most of the time I'm sleepwalking through my life. Like most other people on the planet, most of us are actually sleepwalking through our lives, unaware of the impact that we're having. So can I raise my game enough to just be a little bit more conscious of how I'm interacting with each of the people that I'm seeing and interacting with on a daily basis? And that's not just clients, that's not just family and friends. This is people in the wider context of life. You know, everyone I bump into is another human being. You know, they're my brother stroke sister. I'm not getting too woo-woo and spiritual here, but the truth is actually we're the same race. And, you know, so can I greet the person at Tesco's that's going blip, blip, blip with my shopping and have a nice human interaction with that individual? Just for that brief period while they're checking my stuff out and I'm loading my bag up, can I just be mindful enough to be present for that individual? Because actually that interaction might just, you know, lift their day a touch. They may be dealing with some stuff that you and I may be completely, well, we normally are, very unaware of. You know, we all have a story. So it's about trying to be in that space of being present and see if I can give them that gift of my presence and not be on my phone and doing other stuff and completely distracted, which I have been a little bit in this conversation of we've had a couple of interruptions, you know, the dog barking or someone coming in the office and me thinking I've been locked in this building and I'm not going to be able to get out for the weekend. You know, so there've been moments of me dipping out of being present with you, for example. So, and we do that all the time. So how conscious can we be? You know, so it all for me is about the fingerprint. What fingerprint are you leaving in all of those interactions? Now, I'm not saying that you have to be switched on all the time. That's almost impossible. But can we raise our game just a touch to actually leave an even better fingerprint, you know, on a daily basis? So can we incrementally think about how we improve that day by day by day?
And what would you, because I agree with you totally, it's becoming more conscious in the present moment. That's all there is really, just to define us, is remembering, be in the room, be in that moment, be with that person. Are you really listening to them, like you say, rather than just worrying about the dog barking and we're filming a video? And how would you say that you allow yourself to become, what kind of reminders do you set yourself, or how do you teach yourself that habit? Because like you say, we as our bodies, we are set in habits pretty much 90% of the day, and it's being able to use those precious moments to bring ourselves out of some of those habits, to have those real human moments where it's not pre-programmed in and you are just completely ad-libbing with this person, creating something amazing. So what practice would you suggest to people to bring some more of those conscious moments in?
It is actually just a learnt behavior now. So it's about doing it consistently, repetition. So you know, being more mindful. So being mindful, you know, mindfulness has become a big thing, but it really, you know, I sort of sometimes get a little bit wound up about mindfulness, because actually mindfulness is just awareness. So it's about being aware. So, you know, the family are very, very quick at jumping on me when I'm not being what they call the guru. You know, oh, you didn't handle that too well, did you, guru? You know, that's the sort of feedback I get from the family. So, you know, they give me feedback, and I'm pretty hard on myself as well. You know, I'm competitive, and I'm striving to be a good role model, a good example. A lot of the time I don't get that right at all. I'm nowhere near a good example. But am I striving for, you know, a better version of myself? Yes, I am, absolutely. And that only comes about by taking 100% responsibility. So if I blame circumstance or other people and pointing the finger at all those things, I'm not learning. And you know, I want to continue to have a growth mindset, instead of thinking, actually, you know, this is the best version of me and that's it, I'm done.
But it's actually about, you know, again, when people do that, you know, as a coach, it's just a case to go, well, it's not about being right, it's not about getting it perfect, it's actually about making mistakes, it's actually about taking the action, falling flat on your face, you know, in front of everybody, and then being able to learn from it and then move forward. So it's actually the falling down and getting up again. So there's no such guru. Yeah, okay, we are people who purport to have a set of standards of effectiveness that work for people performance and things like that. Yes, and we are practicing it in our daily lives. Yes, but do we get it right? No. We're just getting out there, trying it and putting it into action, and then also sharing that with other people, and then we get it wrong, and then we look to other role models to you know. So I don't know. That's how it is for me, and I did worry about that a couple of years ago. That there's a whole, my God, I'm going to have to be perfect if I'm going to be some sort of business coach. But no.
They had a saying in Australia, which was on a TV ad, which was "Have a go, you mug," and it was all around a campaign of people stop people from being lounge chair sports people, you know, looking at the TV and having a go at the athletes on the TV. Well, actually, instead of, so the slogan was "Have a go, you mug." You know, well, get off the sofa and go out and go and do a 10K run. Go and do that. See how hard it is to maintain fitness and all those things. So you're bang on. You know, it's about taking action. So each time you put yourself into that, stretch that comfort zone of, okay, putting my hand up and saying, yeah, okay, I'll have a go at that. I'll do that. I'll volunteer for this. You know, as you say, you learn by doing. And actually, some of the biggest learns are, of course, some of your worst nightmares. You know, you learn from those things more so. And there's a saying that I don't know where it comes from. It's a very religious context, but they say that if God wants to punish you, he or she will give you 7 years of good luck.
Oh.
And the reason behind it, of course, if you're on a roll for 7 years, you won't even look at yourself. You won't look at what else could you be doing to be more, because you haven't had those moments where you've clashed up against a brick wall and thought, well, what do I need to do now? I really need to look at this.
Yeah, yeah.
God wants to punish you. He'll give you 7 years of good luck.
And I think there's a great way to bring the interview to a close, and I would like to close it on "Have a go, you mug." Yeah. And I think that if there's anything to describe business coaching and high performance in performing corporate teams, is have a go, you mug, because that's all you can do. You know, that's the best sentence I've heard in ages. So thank you very much, Jim, and thank you for sharing all of your your business thoughts and your life experiences, and hopefully it's touched on some areas for some people watching the video that they aspire to either be an ultra cyclist or work as a business consultant, and learn from some of what you've shared. So I look forward to our next conversation, and thank you very much.
You're welcome, and it's been a pleasure to have this conversation just before the weekend. So thanks ever so much, Rachel.
No worries, yeah, and we can all go have a beer and a Barbie with Have a Go.
What a beauty.
See you later, Jim. Speak soon. Bye bye.